All right, well, you can see here, it got the body back down on the chassis. I think what I'm gonna work on today is I'm gonna cut the trunk out so that we can get the back all the way down as low as possible. And then we're gonna come up here. As I said, we're gonna move this backwards. I measured this. Our distance here behind the engine is about 10 inches that I can move that to the rear. So our whole drivetrain here is gonna go that way. Then we're gonna have to get inside of it on the floor so we can redo the rocker panels and everything. And in the back here, as I said, what we're gonna do is we're gonna get in the trunk and I'm gonna cut the floor of that out because I will bring it down lower in here in a minute. The wheels and the tires, even though I could change the offset, they are rubbing on the inner fender wells. So basically I think what I'm gonna do is kind of like a quote mini tub. Instead of getting spacers, instead of getting different wheels and tires. So there's a lot of, on the to-do list for this video, but I think what I want to start with is getting the trunk cut out so that I can drop the rear of the body so that the back of it is as low as possible. So that's the plan for today, and we will see how far we can get. Thanks for coming back. Okay, so before I jump into doing things, what I'm getting at here is you can see how tight the wheel is to the inner fender well. That's because the chassis for the S10 is actually more narrow than what the Master was. So I could get different offset wheels, push that out, but then it doesn't fit on the inside of the outer fender. So I think I'm gonna stick with this wheel that's on there, but because that's running into it, we'll kind of hop into the inside of the Master here. What we'll see is that I've got, you can see that's probably 3 inches that I've got between the inner fender well and the S10 frame. So I'm gonna cut this out and we're gonna move that in a little bit so we've got more offset. Well, not offset, but we've got more room for the tire to fit in here because we're touching. When that happens, the whole body is gonna go down. You can see here that we still got our frame. We're sitting on top of that. Also, the entire trunk is basically covered in fiberglass. So this whole area in here needs to go. And what I'm gonna do is I think I will weld in some bracing from front to back and side to side here. Then I will cut the floor out so that we drop down over our frame rail there. And again, it's a rat rod, so we're not worried about all sorts of awesome body work here, but I just want this bit of the frame to basically sit right inside here. We've got plenty of room. So if I cut this little step out all the way up there, the body is channeled onto the frame and we get this thing all the way down on the ground. So that is the plan. Again, sacrificing all this because they covered it with fiberglass doesn't really make me feel all that bad about it. And I think we're gonna have kind of a bitch and ride when we're all said and done. So that is the plan for doing more on the Master Deluxe chop here so we can really channel the body, bring it down to the ground. All right, so here's the deal. There is a line here that is actually centers where the axle should be. So I know that I've got the wheel and tire in the right space as far as the axle is concerned, because if I follow this contour around, it perfectly follows the tire. So I took my grinder from the inside. There's a kind of some construction on the inside right there that goes across. It's behind where the back seat was. And I'm gonna take my Sawzall and I'm just gonna use the edge of the Sawzall here and I'm gonna put it on the tire and I'm just gonna use that as my reference to follow all the way along here so I can cut that out nice and smooth, and then I'll follow this area where they use the bead roller or stamping on the body, and I will continue that cut back here, which will take us into the trunk. We'll have to go inside so I can show you that. But what I'm gonna do is kind of cut along this contour, and that'll kind of give me my reference just so I can set the body down, figure out where we need to be. And then on the inside, I will create kind of like that quote mini tub kind of thing. So I can use a wheel and tire just like this without changing the offset. Again, because if the fender comes out here, I can't offset more this way without making the fender wider. So I have 3 inches that way. I'm just gonna go inside as opposed to coming out further. And then once that's cut, I can go into the trunk and remove that material, and then we can drop the body all the way down on the frame. So let's do that. All right, so again, what we're doing here, as you can see, I just followed the contour of the wheel right back to this, where there's the line in the frame there, in the body stamping in the inner fender well. If we go to the inside over here, so what we're looking at, again, all of this is fiberglass. This was part of the trunk. I've seen actual masters that are well done that have this. I think they used to put the spare tire under here. At least the 2 or 3 that I've seen all have this, so seem to be a common addition. I don't know if it's factory or not, but so my cut went through there, along there to the inside of the fender well. So what I'm gonna do, I think, is I'm gonna notch this out and go down so this whole piece comes out. But because this is all flimsy and this is all fiberglass, I think what I might do is I might weld something from there to there just to kind of maintain some kind of structural integrity in here before I cut the entire thing apart. But definitely, you know, all this, I don't know if you can hear it. This just all needs to go. So we're gonna get rid of all that fiberglass, basically build ourselves a new trunk. But first, let's add some structure to this. So basically the ass end doesn't go all weeble wobble on me. So I kind of stared at that for a minute, and I think honestly what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the whole floor of the trunk out. It's all fiberglass. It all needs to go anyways. It'll let me drop the whole thing down on the frame. So good riddance. Let's just, you know, move on. Cut it. Figure it out later. Now, it always seems like I'm just making a lot more work for myself. So just to do a little bit of automotive excavation here, this corner here is, well, there's just fiberglass behind that, but this bit of the trunk, this is a piece of metal scabbed in there. I don't even know how it's secured, other than it's covered with like an inch of fiberglass. Honestly, I don't even think they welded that in. I think they took that piece of metal, bent it, and just threw all that fiberglass on top. The entire trunk was gone. I mean, this is metal here technically, but patches all around, all the way up there. Better to make it new, and we will, of course, build our own custom trunk here. So now we have no floor whatsoever. We will now try and put this down, see if we can get the body all the way over the chassis and see what it looks like. So let me clean some of this mess up, and then we're going to drop that right on the ground. All right, so we're pretty close. We are still going to have to do a little bit around the wheel there. You can see where the tire is actually touching on the wheel well, so I'm going to cut that out a little bit more. A couple of my cross braces up there by the B pillar, it's actually sitting on top of the gas tank over there, so I need to cut that out and move it up a little bit so that the body can continue dropping down. You can see all the way up front there that the body is actually above the chassis. So once I remove that middle cross brace, the front of the body should come down, and we're going to be pretty darn close to having this body all the way down on the chassis. So, all right, cut those first and then cut the cross brace out, continue going down with the body. All right, well, never mind the front end here, because just pretend you don't see that. But here's the body. I got it resting on the chassis, and I think it looks absolutely killer. You can see I got the rear wheels tucked all the way up under there as far as I can get them. So it'll be nice with the fender on there. I'm gonna throw those on with a couple bolts just to see what we got here in a minute. But here's what's also awesome. So I got my just temporary cross braces here. You can see obviously have to build an entire floor, but these body mounts right here will actually, if I just position the body right, line exactly up with the B pillar. So I can run a horizontal support for my floor directly from there, kind of just below where this temporary brace is. And then that will be the basically back of the front seat, and then I'll have to build up the floor behind that for the rear body mounts, and then I'll just build the trunk back there. Up front, we're almost down on the frame. There's going to be a little bit of adjustment that has to happen up here, and I obviously have to build the sills still at this point, but kind of getting things lined up. And also the stance is pretty awesome. Like I said, we're pretty much down on the ground. I'm probably 5 or 6 inches off the ground there, so looks pretty cool. Long way to go, obviously, but little bits of motivation when I'm working. I think it looks pretty cool. So I'll clean up, throw some fenders on there just so it kind of mock up, see what it looks like again, but I think it's going to look absolutely killer. Put a running board on there, put my bumpers on. I think it's going to look cool. All right, so this is exciting. I just threw that on there with a couple bolts. I think we got the wheel exactly center in the wheel well with the fender on there. I think with running boards on, it's going to look absolutely awesome. So forward progress. What I'm going to start doing is building some bracing for the inside so that we can start fabricating our floor. But for the time being, I think that's right on the money. All right, so we're in the car now, and you can see what I did with that was just a brace across the back seat here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the support off here. I'm going to go from this here I'm going to go straight back. I'm going to hug the frame rail, and I'm going to shoot all the way back to the back of the trunk, kind of where that is welded on temporarily. And then I will cut this thing out here on both sides, and then I will start fabricating the bracing for the trunk. Once we've got all this stuff, these temporary supports cut out of here, we're gonna start actually fabricating a floor. All right, now that I've got that crap cut out of there, basically what I'm gonna do is that brace that I've got there, I'm gonna run it to the back of the trunk here. And then I'm gonna basically keep it outside the frame rail. And then what I'll do is I'm going to run a piece from that to this, and then I will make my new inner fender well here from front to back, so that all of this is enclosed on the, so outside stays outside the car. So then I'm going to put a horizontal brace like this, side to side, and then we're going to kind of have a flat surface in the back here. So I think the compressors will be mounted one on each side. The tank will kind of probably, sit right about there in the trunk itself. So I'm going to do some measuring, and we will cut some pieces to start making framework for our trunk. Okay, so here's the concept. So we've got all the way up there, we've got our horizontal brace going across. This lengthwise piece is gonna run, you can see if I move over here, it's gonna move outside of the frame rail. That'll be where I make my inner fender well over here. In the back, I've just got this scrap piece holding up this piece that's going transversely across. The issue is that I've got about 1 5/8 inches or so. I do not have a bender, but what I'm thinking I'm gonna do is I'll just measure the halfway point of this. I'm gonna make some slices, some relief cuts until I can bend this to shape, because I really would like to weld that to this on the back of the trunk, because it's actually decent metal, and I think that structurally would make the body a lot more rigid. So I think what I'm gonna do now, even though it is more work, I would rather have this welded all the way across this. So that will be the next part of this project. Once that is connected to this, then I will weld that piece in, and we'll do some horizontal supports back and forth. And then I think what I'll do is I'll run a vertical from there to there as well for the back seat. Okay, that's the plan. All right, so here's the deal. I have no idea how many cuts I'm gonna need to make to get that radius for the trunk. So I spaced them out every 2 inches. I'm gonna cut them with the chop saw here. I'll take it back and forth to the master, see what it lines up like. And then after I make the slices, the relief cuts, of course, I'm gonna have to weld it back together. But I think that's the only way I'm gonna get the radius that I want to match the trunk. So that's next. All right, so I cut my relief from that. So I'm gonna line this up. I got my center point here, and I'm gonna tack it maybe 4 or 5 times just to hold it in place. And on the edge, the lip of the trunk here. So then what I'll do is, after I've got it tacked in place, I will tack each one of these little reliefs so that it stays in the position that I want. Then I'll cut the tacks off of the body here, and then I will weld these back together so that I can keep the contour here on the back of the trunk. All right, so I got that tacked in there, and it looks okay, but you know, anyone who's not an idiot would have looked at their latch on their trunk and realized that it will now bump into the middle of that because I wanted to get more surface area for my welds to stick to. So I put a bunch of tacks in there, and it's pretty well part of the car now. Now, the only thing I have going for me is this latch here is totally frozen, doesn't work at all. So I can take that out without any problem, but good job, Gomer. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is put those long horizontal pieces in on both sides. I will cut them to length and weld them in, and then we'll do some horizontal cross bracing as well. All right, so I'm making a mess, but here's the general concept for the trunk. So this is the bracing support system kind of structure that I came up with. So what's gonna happen is I think I'm just gonna tack this here. I measured it. That will fit through the windshield. So I'll bring it from the windshield all the way into the back, and then I will set it where it needs to be, kind of tack it in place. And then this will be the structure for the trunk. And those pieces there will be under what the rear seat is going to be. And then I'm also going to run some vertical supports from this thing here down to the floor. So we should be pretty rigid, pretty locked into place when I'm done with this. So I'm just gonna put a couple tacks on the corners and then see if we can feed it in, make sure it fits. Once I make sure that it fits, I will take it back out because then I want to burn it in all the way around all of the corners. Okay, well, here's where we're gonna leave it for this one. Some good progress. Got the structure for the floor in the trunk and the rear seat welded in there. And we're gonna have to build inner fender wells. We're gonna have to do a whole floor pan, all those things yet to go. But it was a good couple days. Basketball tournament tomorrow, so I'll be out of town. And I think this is where we're gonna leave it for this one. I'm very pleased with the progress. Kind of worked my ass off for a couple of days, but finally got the body down where it belongs, and you know, got to keep going forward. Build some floor pans next, but that's where I'm going to leave this one. Thanks for coming back. If anybody has any comments, please leave them below.